Dyan. Sige na, let's start off. All right, I hope you have your notes with you. In-upload ko yan kanina, so please bear with me. So this is part, I think this is the third to the last ng ating midterm. So anyway, yung midterms nyo is around first week of November ata. So as much as possible, gusto ko matapos ang mga topics natin. Pero after ng Neoplasia, I think we would jump sa environmental and basta yung sa topic natin, yung last topic natin for the midterms. Unahin natin yun before sa infectious diseases. Actually, nagdadalawang isip ako kung i-include ko pa infectious disease kasi aperte kalawig sang ininga ininga topic. Anyway, sige lang, mag-announce na lang ako. So guys, so this is Neoplasia. So medyo mahaba-haba ito but very easy to understand. So let's make it easier for you to understand. All right, so from the definition of terms, so neoplasia literally means the process of new growth, and the study of these tumors or neoplasms is known as your oncology, from the word onkos, which means tumor, and logos, which means to study. And the most common term that is commonly used by the yung usual na tao, so meron akong cancer, I have the big C. So cancer yun is the common term that refers to all malignant tumors, whether epithelial in origin or mesenchymal in origin or mga lymphoma. So in general, cancer sila. Okay, for a more objective definition of neoplasia. So neoplasia or neoplasm is an abnormal mass of tissue, the growth of which exceeds and is uncoordinated with that of the normal tissues and persists in the same excessive manner after cessation of the stimuli which evoke the change. So remember the term uncoordinated kasi the process of your cell cycle is coordinated. So meron tayong iba-ibang phases, no? And we have checkpoints to check kung okay yung cell division natin. So in neoplasia, there is uncoordinated. So ibig sabihin merong clonal expansion of the neoplastic cells, and this exceeds the normal rate of growth for a normal tissue to grow, for example. Okay. So with regards to neoplasia, we have different nomenclature. We have different naming, or how we name the tumors is dependent on the components of the neoplasm. For example, all tumors, benign malignant, have two basic components. So meron tayong parenchyma, which is composed of your proliferating neoplastic cells. And we also have the supporting structure, or the stroma, which is made up of your connective tissue, including the blood vessels. So remember, itong supporting or supportive stroma natin, ito yung mga structures natin which will help the tumor cells or the tumor to grow. Okay, so may blood vessels tayo dyan and connective tissue which holds them together. Kasi pag cross section natin, pag usually mga malignant tumors, usually tough sila, and sometimes meron tayong necrosis, so medyo soft sila sa area kasi usually, although meron tayong blood vessel proliferation or angiogenesis or cancer angiogenesis, hindi enough yung blood vessels na yun to support the expanding growth, na sobrang excess talaga yung growth ng tumor cells natin, so hindi siya makakapag-compensate sa rate of growth. So that's why some of the tumor cells na yung mga bulky talaga can undergo necrosis. So as I have mentioned, there are two basic components of your neoplasm. We have the parenchyma and we have the stroma. The parenchyma, which is made up of your neoplastic cells, while your stroma is made up of the non-neoplastic. Ibig sabihin, these are host-derived connective tissue and blood vessels. And remember that the nomenclature of tumor is based on the parenchymal component, kung ano yung neoplastic cells, proliferating neoplastic cells. So here in this picture, we have, so pag nakikita mo, based on your histology, we have the tall columnar epithelium, okay, or tall columnar cells. Tapos disordered yung growth nila. So from the looks of it, para siyang glands. So these are actually your well-differentiated adenocarcinoma. So for benign tumors, remember the suffix oma. Okay, to call the cell benign tumor, meron tayong suffix na oma. Okay, so tumors of mesenchymal cells generally follow this rule. For example, tuloy For example, we have fibroma, okay, chondroma, osteoma. So ibig sabihin, ito yung mesenchymal cell of origin natin. Fibroma from fibrous tissue or fibroblast, chondroma from the chondroid cells or your cartilage, and osteoma from your bone. So again, benign tumors, prefix plus suffix. Yung prefix natin, ibig sabihin ito yung type of cell plus the suffix, which is your oma. Okay, so examples: fibroma, fibrous tissue, lipoma, okay, fatty, chondroma, cartilage, leiomyoma, smooth muscle, rhabdomyoma, skeletal muscle. So Richard Goma, okay, so benign tumor ni Richard Gomez. All right, nye. Joke yarn. Okay. Sige. So epithelial benign tumors are classified on the basis of, first, we have the cell of origin, the microscopic pattern, and the macroscopic pattern. So we have terms such as adenoma, which is actually a benign epithelial neoplasm producing a gland pattern. So pag sinabi ng adeno, so gland-like pattern or glandular pattern. Or these are derived from glands, but not necessarily exhibiting a glandular or a gland-like pattern. Basta derived siya from glands, no? Adeno, okay? Adenoma yan. There are also such a term as your papilloma, which is a benign epithelial neoplasm growing on any surface that produce microscopic or macroscopic finger-like patterns of frond-like papillae. Diba? Remember the pillae, parang tongue-like structures or finger-like projections. So this is an example of your adenoma. Remember the gland-like structures, all right, of this tumor. This is benign neoplasm. Kasi oma, okay? And papilloma, benign din ito. So notice the frond-like structures or the finger-like structures of this neoplasm. And we have the supporting structure here. So usually may mga blood vessels dyan. All right? So another term is your polyp. It is a mass that projects above the mucosal surface to form a macroscopically visible structure. So usually, pwede din the skin, no? Mga fibroepithelial polyp natin, ang mga ano natin ba, ang mga sa dalunggan, di ba? Usually may mga polyp tayo dyan. So may ka-extra nga dalunggan. But actually these are polyp. Okay, so nagpo-project siya above the mucosal surface or above the skin. So in this case, this is a colonic polyp. O, tingnan mo, nag-project siya above the mucosal surface. This is the mucosa, this is the mucosa, this is the submucosa, okay, this is the muscularis propria. So this is an example of the gross picture of your polyp. So usually pedunculated. Actually, polyp can be pedunculated or sessile. Ibig sabihin sessile, naka-stuck on lang. Pag sinabi ng pedunculated, meron siyang stalk. So just like this one, no? Meron siyang stalk. Okay, so this is the polyps. All right, so 1, 2, 3. So may stalk siya. So for malignant tumors naman, we have the term sarcoma. Okay, pag sinabi nating malignant tumors arising from mesenchymal tissue are usually called a sarcoma. So usually ginagamit itong suffix or yung suffix na to, yung sarcoma, to indicate that it is derived from a mesenchymal tissue. Pag sinabi ni mesenchymal tissue, ito yung galing sa connective tissue natin, connective tissue stroma. So derived from the Greek word sar, which means fleshy. Kasi usually these tumors or sarcoma are usually bulky tumors, large tumors sila. Okay, for example, we have fibrosarcoma, we have liposarcoma, leiomyosarcoma, rhabdomyosarcoma. From fibrous tissue, from fatty tissue or adipose tissue, from smooth muscle, and from skeletal muscle tissue. So ito yung sarcoma from mesenchymal tissue. How about your epithelial in origin? So ibig sabihin, yung mga cells derived from the covering of your body cavities or the covering of your organs or your surface epithelium. So these are termed as your carcinoma. So depende din, carcinomas can be used as suffix to indicate that it is an epithelial cell in origin. So pwede yang masundan or ma-precede ng whether squamous cell carcinoma, whether adenocarcinoma. All right? So as I have mentioned, ito no, malignant tumor arising in mesenchymal tissue is sarcoma. Don't forget that mesenchymal tissue sarcoma. And again, from fibrous tissue, fibrosarcoma, from the bone, osteosarcoma, and cartilage, chondrosarcoma. Okay, and again, carcinoma if it is arising from your epithelium. Okay, so it can be a squamous cell carcinoma, syempre, as you have learned from your histology, squamous cell, di ba? Yung stratified squamous cell natin covering, for example, your skin, all right? So squamous cell carcinoma, we have renal cell adenocarcinoma, or simply, ginagamit ito is renal cell carcinoma and cholangiocarcinoma, all right? So this picture here is your, if you can remember, no? So your histology, so pag top, top view natin, so they are laid down as your flattened cells kasi nasa top view yan, so hindi makita yung layer nila, hindi makita yung stratification. So this is our pag nakita mo, they are pinkish, okay, because they are made up of keratin. Okay, they stain pink with H&E, yung keratin natin. So these are your keratin pearls, and this would signify a well-differentiated squamous cell carcinoma. And other terms, we have the ano yun lang, parang descriptive lang din yun. We have the papillary cystadenocarcinoma of the ovary. So papillary, kasi nakikita natin, it's either microscopic or macroscopic. We have papillae. Okay, we have this one, no? Mga papillae, mga finger-like projections. And cyst, kasi usually this tumor, grossly cystic sila. Or some, pwedeng siyang mix, no? Merong solid component, merong cystic component. And adenocarcinoma, kasi these are actually derived from your glandular epithelium. Okay, so remember yung nomenclature natin na pag sinabi natin OMA, benign tumor. So we have different exceptions, and these are the following, no? We have melanoma kasi may OMA. So these are actually malignant neoplasm ito sila. Okay, malignant melanoma sa skin. We have mesothelioma or malignant tumor arising from the mesothelium. So remember your mesothelium natin, it lines the body cavities. Okay, so we have the pleural, pericardial, peritoneal. And also we have seminoma, malignant neoplasm of the testis, lymphoma, or pag sa female naman, dysgerminoma, pag sa ovary. Lymphoma, malignant neoplasm of your lymphoid tissue. So remember guys, the exceptions of the suffix of your nomenclature na pag OMA is benign. So these are the exceptions because although meron silang OMA sa dulo, pero these are actually malignant neoplasm. All right. So also there are also tumors which are composed of your different cell or different or divergent differentiation of a single line of parenchymal cells, of which tinatawag silang benign mixed tumor or pleomorphic adenoma is a perfect example of this one. So this is the histologic picture of your pleomorphic adenoma. We have a component. Pleomorphic adenoma actually is a common, this is a normal, this is a common tumor of your parotid gland. So we have the mesenchymal component, which is made up of your myxoid stroma, okay, or parang cartilaginous, and we have the epithelial component, this one, yung mga bluish, okay, which is your epithelial cells. So kaya tinawag siyang mixed tumors because there is the polyclonar or pleomorphic na made up of your stroma or myxoid stroma and your epithelial component. Okay, so remember also that the great majority of neoplasms, even mixed tumors, are composed of cells representative of a single germ cell layer. Now, when the tumor is derived from 3 germ cell layers, so pag sinabing germ cell layer, we have the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. So it is known as your teratoma. Okay, usually teratoma present or common ito sa young female na mayroon sang adnexal mass or mayroon sang tumor sa ovary. Ano ito yung itsura niya grossly? Usually these are cystic structures na may makikita kang sebum. Okay? Or parang oily material or grumous material composed of your entangled hair. Excuse me. Meron kang entangled hair. Sometimes meron din mga ano diyan, mga ngipon, meron diyan mga yun, sometimes may mga cartilage, okay? Because this tumor is derived from the 3 germ cell layer. So sometimes pag nag-cut kami ng mga specimen nga ini, pag naka-cut kami tapos makita kami nga damo nga mga mga histologic types, okay? Parang nagga-form ka ba or nag-cut ka sang tawo kay may ara ka gid may makat ka nga ngipon, may mata, okay, may ilong, mata, ilong, balikat, ulo. So, yon yung teratoma natin. All right, so this is the histologic picture of your teratoma. So we have meron tayong parang neural tissue, no? Mature neural tissue. We also have blood vessels here. We have the sebaceous glands here, yung mga adnexa natin, and we also have your the skin, okay, the surface epithelium. Tapos itong mga igko-igko among sa mga sebum natin or mga greasy materials. Usually pag nag-cut ini ka oily gid sa pag mag-ikat mo siya. All right. We also have choristoma and hamartoma. So these are actually parang malformations siya, no? Pag sinabi natin choristoma, this is an ectopic rest of normal tissue. Ibig sabihin, normal siya na tissue sa isang lugar na kung saan wala siya dito dapat. Okay? Kumbaga parang pinagtagpo pero hindi tinadhana. All right? So for example, adrenal cells under the kidney capsule. So dapat wala siya dito kasi suprarenal sa babaw siya dapat sa kidney pero adto to siya. Okay, while your hamartoma, these are aberrant differentiation of many that may produce a mass of disorganized but mature specialized cells or tissue that is indigenous to a particular site. So ibig sabihin, yung hamartoma, cells ito na derived from a certain tissue na kung diin adto or didto na gid siya. For example, in lung parenchyma, remember that the lung tissue is composed of your pneumocytes, composed of your fibroblasts, of your macrophages, of your blood vessels, and your cartilage. Okay, so ibig sabihin pag may pulmonary hamartoma, pwede yung cartilage which is normally present in your lungs is nag-proliferate or nag-form ng tumor. That is considered as a hamartoma. Okay, so based on biological behavior, neoplasia can be benign or malignant later. We're going to differentiate between the two. And then based on the cell of origin, we have, okay, if it is one neoplastic cell type derived from fat or derived from the glandular epithelium or glands, lipoma or adenocarcinoma. And if more than one neoplastic cell type, we have fibroadenoma. This is the most common neoplasm of the breast in young female. Okay, so pag may nakita kayong lump sa breast nyo na matigas, this movable, so more likely, and you are young, more likely that is fibroadenoma. It can be cured with surgical excision. And if it is more than one neoplastic cells that is derived from more than one germ cell layer, usually tatlo, so we have the teratoma. Okay, three, teratoma. Derived from embryonic tissue, we have blastoma. So remember the term or the word blast. So usually, ano yan, young, di ba? Pag blasts, these are young or embryonic tissue, which could be benign, such as in your osteoblastoma, or malignant, such as in your neuroblastoma. Okay. So ito yung mga histologic pictures natin and gross picture of your neoplasia. So we have lipoma. So itong ano natin, no, mga adipocytes natin. So nag-form siya in lobules. Usually common ito sa mga tiil or sa mga likod. So lipoma. Okay. We also have your teratoma, as I mentioned earlier. So ito yung histologic picture niya. And we also have your fibroadenoma. So as I mentioned, the most common breast neoplasm in young, benign breast neoplasm in young females. All right. So we have fibro. So from the term itself, no, we have the ducts that proliferates. We have the fibro. The fibrous component of the breast is proliferating. Sometimes iniipit na niya yung mga ducts natin. So pwedeng intercanalicular or intracanalicular pattern. So as I've mentioned, ito yung malformation. We have the hamartoma composed of cells that is native to the organ. As I have mentioned, ara na to siya, ang cells na to, nag-proliferate yung cells ngayon that is native to that specific organ. Hamartoma. While your choristoma, wala siya dapat doon, pero nandun siya. These are normal cells, hindi siya neoplastic, or hindi siya carcinogenic, or hindi siya malignant tumor. So, benign lang ito siya. So for example, pancreatic tissue present in your gallbladder. So this is the gallbladder wall. No? We have the lining epithelium. and we have the muscle wall of your gallbladder. Tapos nandito yung pancreas. Okay, remember yung pancreas natin nandun siya sa naka-attach siya 'di ba sa second part of your duodenum. Eh bakit nandun siya sa gallbladder? Ang layo naman. Okay. So we go now to dysplasia. So what is dysplasia? In dysplasia, there is loss of uniformity of the individual cells, and there is loss of architectural orientation. So usually it occurs mainly in your surface lining epithelium. And remember, we have patterns, or we have characteristics of your dysplasia, and this is pleomorphism, hyperchromasia, increased mitosis, and loss of polarity. Remember, dysplasia, parang pre-malignant, ano ito siya, kumbaga ito yung transformational, o ito yung nasa parang, kumbaga parang window period before a cell becomes neoplastic, or before the lesion becomes neoplastic. Okay, this is an example of your, this is the skin. All right, so pwede cervix ito, no? Kasi again, lined by your squamous lining epithelium. So notice also that this is the normal. We have the reserved cells or the basal cells here, and we have the squamous epithelium. Notice there is some degree of your polarity. Ibig sabihin, orderly yung growth nila. So actually, yung polarity makikita natin usually sa mga glandular epithelium. All right. This one is your dysplastic epithelium, no? So we have disorganized. So dito medyo hindi pa siya, okay? Parang going towards neoplasia na yan, okay? So dysplastic na dito, and then eventually, yeah, dito neoplastic. So parang invasive na itong component na to. But this one just shows you the transformation of your neoplasia. All right. So we have carcinoma in situ, or CIS, okay? Okay, this is an intraepithelial malignancy in which the malignant cells involve the entire thickness of the epithelium without penetration of the basement membrane. So remember, yung basement membrane, it rests, no? Nandoon yung epithelial cells natin nagre-rest. So usually it is under the epithelial lining. So meron siyang a thin eosinophilic material supposedly nandito. All right? So ang function ng basement membrane is that it protects the underlying tissue. So it contains the malignant cells kung sakaling meron man. So it protects the underlying tissue. Once na-invade na itong basement membrane natin, so that is not anymore carcinoma in situ, that is carcinoma na, or invasive carcinoma. Okay, so the natural history of most malignant tumors can be divided into 4 phases. So ito yung transformation ng neoplasia natin. So first is that malignant change in the target cell, referred to as transformation. And then itong transformation natin, yung transformed cells will clonally, will have a clonal expansion. Ibig sabihin, mag-grow yung mga transformed cells. And then eventually, pag lumaki na yung neoplasia natin, composed of your transformed cells, eventually magiging neoplastic sila, and they can locally invade the surrounding structure or surrounding tissues. And then eventually, pag hindi na-stop o hindi naagapan, usually in the case in the Philippines, no, sa mga probinsya, okay, nagkakaroon tayo ng distant metastasis kasi napabayaan, inalagaan. Alright. Wait lang. Okay. So we also have terms such as differentiation and anaplasia. This is very important kasi nasa grading ito ng tumors natin. So pag sinabi ng differentiation, this refers to the extent to which the neoplastic cells resemble or comparable to the normal cells, both morphologically and functionally. Pag sinabing well-differentiated, ibig sabihin, mas kamukha niya itong normal cell na to. Pag moderately or poorly differentiated, hindi mo na alam kung saan siya galing, kung whether ito pa parang skin, okay? Pag sinabi nating anaplasia, it lacks differentiation. Ibig sabihin, hindi mo na talaga alam kung ano ang itsura, kung saan galing itong cell na to. Is this squamous cell carcinoma ba? Or parang glandular na sa? So if you find a hard time looking for or determining the origin of the cells, whether it is, for example, squamous or columnar or adenocarcinoma, then it is known to be as anaplastic. All right. So, for example, this is a tumor in the myometrium. So, very common, a myoma or leiomyoma. Okay, smooth muscle cell, which recapitulates the normal smooth muscle cells in your myometrium. So, this is known to be as well-differentiated smooth muscle neoplasm. All right, so yon. Next is your this one. So pag nakita natin, glandular pa din siya. So makita natin parang it looks like a normal gland. So ma-determine glandular yan. So it is said to be as well differentiated. Malignant neoplasms range from well differentiated to undifferentiated. So remember, kasi we have well differentiated, for example, adenocarcinoma, kasi nandun like our picture earlier, no? So well differentiated adenocarcinoma, or sometimes it can be undifferentiated, hindi natin alam. We can only know them by using special tests such as your immunohistochemistry, kasi ma-determine natin if this is a squamous cell carcinoma, if this is tagged by your P63 or CEA, for example, for adenocarcinoma. All right. Next is your malignant neoplasms composed of undifferentiated cells are said to be anaplastic, as I have mentioned earlier. Right. And remember, the hallmark of malignant transformation is your anaplasia. Kasi sobrang pangit na yung cells. So sometimes they can become tumor giant cells na sobrang laki talaga, parang 50 times the normal size of the cell. All right. So this is an example of your well-differentiated adenocarcinoma. Kasi pag nakita mo pa din, ano pa din siya? Glandular pa din siya, right? Okay. Pag moderately differentiated or ano na siya, or poorly differentiated adenocarcinoma, malalaman mo yan pag may mga solid structures na or solid neoplasia. All right? Hindi na siya nagpo-form ng glands. Malalaman mo lang siya if you do immunostains, for example, CEA. So pag nag-mark siya, this is glandular in origin. All right? So anaplasia, lack of differentiation, is marked by the following changes. We have pleomorphism, same as your dysplasia, but milder yung dysplasia. Dysplasia, ito is more overt, okay, or more obvious yung changes nito, morphologic changes. So we have pleomorphism. When we say pleomorphism, there is variation in size and shape of the tumor cells. So as you can see it here, so as I have mentioned earlier, sometimes yung mga anaplastic cells become very, very large, or sometimes they mag-form sila ng tumor giant cells like this one. So this is an example of your rhabdomyosarcoma or malignant mesenchymal tumor derived from your skeletal muscle. So malalang pag skeletal muscle kasi these are rhabdomyoblasts. Okay, meron siyang eosinophilic cytoplasm and very, very pangit. Okay. We also have abnormal nuclear morphology. So as I mentioned, sobrang laki nila at sobrang dark yung color nila. So you can see it here, no? Okay, masyadong maitim. Okay, and the nucleus to cytoplasmic ratio may approach 1:1 instead of normal 1:4 or 1:6. Ibig sabihin, ibig sabihin it is the ratio ng nucleus to cytoplasm. Usually ganun yung ratio natin. Pero sometimes parang 1:1 na sila. Ibig sabihin, this is one of the characteristics of your anaplasia. And again, chromatin is often coarse, clumped, distributed along the nuclear membrane. That's why it imparts an extremely dark staining or hyperchromatic. And usually, malalaki yung nucleoli. There are macronuclei present. And also, we have mitosis. Remember, pag merong mitosis, ibig sabihin the cells are actively dividing. So large number of mitosis, sometimes meron tayong mga abnormal mitosis which forms or produce your tripolar, quadripolar, or multipolar spindles, okay, or atypical. Like this one, this is tripolar mitosis. So malalaman mo yan, these are your mitosis, clump yung nuclei natin. Or yes, clump yung nucleus natin. Okay, and again, there is loss of polarity, just like your dysplasia, yung beginning dysplasia. Hindi na siya oriented yung cell, disorganized na siya. All right. And other changes such as formation of tumor giant cells, as I mentioned earlier. Okay, so this is, again, your keratin pearls. Okay, so you can remember, sometimes, if you look at the higher magnification, pag nakita mo in between the cells, yung mga puti-puti na dyan, you can see intercellular bridges. Okay? your intercellular bridges here. So that would signify your well-differentiated tumor kasi para siyang skin. Okay, so keratin pearls, and you have your intercellular bridges, which recapitulates the somehow the normal structure or normal morphology of your stratified squamous epithelium. So this is a well-differentiated squamous cell carcinoma. As I mentioned, ito na yung sinabi natin kanina, yung dysplasia usually in epithelium. Okay, so ito, very important. So when this plastic changes are marked, okay, and involve the entire thickness of the epithelium, but the lesion remains confined to the normal tissue, or ibig sabihin, yung full thickness of the neoplasia, it is considered as pre-invasive lesion and is referred to as a carcinoma in situ. So wala pang invasion sa basement membrane, as I mentioned earlier. So remember that, guys. And once the tumor cells move or nag-invade na siya ng basement membrane natin, then it is said to be, or it's termed as an invasive cancer. So this is the picture earlier. So this is carcinoma in situ. So you notice medyo confined pa siya, pero it involves the whole thickness of your epithelium, but it is confined sa epithelium lang by your basement membrane. And notice also sa dysplasia or sa carcinoma in situ natin, we have changes, disoriented na yung polarity, or wala nang there's loss of polarity, and there are mitotic figures present. Alright. So ito na ngayon yung characteristics ng benign and your malignant tumors. Okay, so how do we differentiate them? So first, with regards to differentiation ng neoplasia, again, usually your benign tumor. So syempre benign tumor, it recapitulates the normal cells from which the tumor arises. So this is termed as well-differentiated, while your malignant can be a well-differentiated malignant neoplasm to overtly anaplastic, such as this one. So well-differentiated squamous cell carcinoma, and this is the highly anaplastic skeletal rhabdomyosarcoma. Next is the rate of growth. Of course, for benign tumors, very slow yung growth. So it can progress pa for quite a long time before it grows to a significant size. Okay, benign tumors such as your leiomyoma, benign tumors yun, or fibroadenoma, these are benign tumors, or even lipoma, right? While your malignant tumors, these are usually fast growing, usually in a matter of, for example, very fast talaga, in a matter of 3 months or 6 months, sobrang laki na ng size niya. Sometimes magkakaroon talaga ng necrosis, sometimes yung mga nasa probinsya, di ba? Usually, madami talaga dito yung mga breast cancer nung inalagaan, sobrang laki ng tumors, tapos nag-ooze na ba ng sometimes inuuod na talaga. Okay? Kasi nag-necrosis na eh. Syempre, nadapuan man yan ng langaw. Alright? And for the local invasion, again, benign, hindi siya invasion. Okay? Or hindi siya nag-invade sa nearby tissues, no? It remains localized. Although there are some benign tumors na pwede siyang parang locally invasive, no? But still it is benign, and
the speaker is not working. Gabi siya kung speaker. Okay. Ano dahil?
Kindly mute.
Wala nagagaw, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Ano dahil?
Hello?
Kay mentioned you. Ano yung mention ka?
Shikaina, can you turn off your microphone? I can hear you. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, sir. May
Okay.
difficulty
Yes,
lang kasi
sir.
sir nga, sir.
Okay. Pasensya na kamo, ari ko sa balay kay gagahod ang mga alaga. Alright, but you can hear me, ha? Okay na, let's proceed na tayo. Okay. So saan sa dinataman? Wait lang gid ha. Okay, so as I have mentioned, local invasion, benign tumors, usually they remain localized, while your malignant tumors, they are progressively invasive. So sometimes they grow beyond the borders of the tumor growth. And with regards to metastasis, yung regional metastasis natin, ibig sabihin, yung distant metastasis natin from the point of origin of the tissue, from the point of origin of the growth of the tumor, okay? So ano siya? So magkaroon siya ng metastasis. So usually a component or an obvious characteristics of your metastasis, all right? Or your malignant neoplasm is your metastasis. So again, your metastasis natin is your, I can hear microphone. Sino naman? Okay, so we have pathways of your metastasis. No, we have lymphatic spread, hematogenous, or seeding of body cavities. So remember that these are the three major pathways. With regards to lymphatic spread, usually very common ito in cases of your epithelial carcinoma or epithelial malignancies such as your carcinomas, while your hematogenous spread is very typical of your sarcoma or your mesenchymal neoplasm or malignant mesenchymal tumors. And for your seeding of body cavities, usually ito yung mga present sa ovarian cancer natin. So they seed on the body cavities in your peritoneal cavities, pleural cavities, or even your pericardial cavities or the pericardium. Okay, this is a cartoon of your benign and malignant neoplasm. For example, your benign or leiomyoma, usually they are small kasi slow growing sila, well demarcated, small growing, non-invasive, non-metastatic, and well differentiated. So they recapitulate the normal smooth muscle cell of your myometrium. Okay, this one, okay, confined siya. All right, this is intramural leiomyoma. Well, this one is your leiomyosarcoma. So again, from the picture, no, very large siya. So it is, it invades na all throughout all the myometrial thickness, the endomyometrium. So 100% invasion na siya. And also involves the uterine serosa. And if you can see it here, so we have the tumor and present meron tayong lymphovascular invasion, okay, which is very common actually in your, this is hematogenous spread, which is common in your leiomyosarcoma kasi vein eh. Pag sa lymphatics, usually it is sa carcinoma. Okay, so large, poorly demarcated, rapidly growing, and hemorrhage and necrosis, locally invasive, metastatic, and poorly differentiated tumors. All right. So again, hindi pala again. So ito yung epidemiology. So remember, there is epidemiology of cancer. Pag sinabi ng epidemiology, this is the study of patterns or the geographical areas or the most common or the ano tawag dito? The most common or rare tumors or the patterns of distribution of the neoplasm. So ito will help us discover the etiology. For example, sa isang particular area in Japan, sila lang yung meron doon. So somehow, like sa bombing, 'di ba, sa Nagasaki, usually yung mga papillary thyroid carcinoma. So somehow nalaman natin yung etiology based on the geographic distribution. For example, sa beetle nut chewers, so yung mga gamama, so they have increased risk of oral carcinoma, okay? And planning preventive measures, okay? Kasi I mean with epidemiology, malalaman natin kung ano yung mga high risk behaviors or mga risk factors of developing the tumors. To know what is common and what is rare, and development of screening methods for early diagnosis such as your pap smear. All right. So again, ito yung mortality and morbidity. So mortality, yung death rates, and morbidity, ito yung merong those with the disease. All right. So again, still ang pinaka-common sa male, okay, is prostate. Okay. Ang sa female naman, again, wala nang tatalo sa breast CA. Alright. Yun yung incidence or yung morbidity. While your cancer deaths, the most common is your lung cancer in male, and for female, still lung cancer din. Alright. Pero sa incidence, breast and prostate. Alright. So there are factors affecting the incidence of cancer. So as I mentioned, we have the geographical, and the environmental, we have age, heredity, acquired pre-neoplastic disorders. So ito yung rates of growth natin. So how long does it take to produce a clinically overt tumor mass? For example, meron tayong isang cell, no, that is approximately 10 micrometers in diameter. So it has to undergo at least 30 doubling. Okay, 30 doubling to produce 10 to the 9 cells, which is approximately mga around 1 gram, which is the clinical detectable size of the tumor. Again, if this 1 gram or this 10 to the 9 cells, pag nag-form siya further na 10 more doubling, so it will produce 10 to the 12 cells. And remember, so from 1 gram to 1 kilogram, no, in 10 doubling of this 10 to the 9 cells. So this is usually the maximal size compatible with life, 1 kilograms. Just ko ang bigat niyan. Alright, so ito yung ano natin, no? Ito yung cartoon natin with the normal cell and transformation events leading to your malignant transformation of your tumor cell. Then mag 30 doubling, okay, will produce your 1 gram, which is the smallest clinically detectable masses. And when further 10 doublings will produce your 1 kilogram na siya. Alright? So, by the way, ito yung heterogeneity natin. Iba-iba yung color niya because along the way, okay, during the tumor genesis, nagkakaroon tayo ng variants or nagkakaroon ng further mutations. Kaya meron tayong tumor heterogeneity. Alright, so yung carcinogenesis natin is a multi-step process at both the phenotypic and genetic levels, and it starts with the following. We have it starts with the genetic damage, whether can be chemical, radiation, viral, or inherited. So ito yung ano natin, no? These are the normal cells, and stimulus causes genetic alteration to the cell, and this can occur using which could alter the genes for growth factor receptors, signal transduction, transcription regulation, DNA repair, and cell survival, which will transform your cell, and eventually a transformed cell which proliferates with poorly regulated growth will result in your neoplasm. So merong clonal expansion. So remember, the targets of genetic damage involves the 4 regulatory genes of the cell. So we have the growth promoting genes termed as your proto-oncogenes. We have the growth inhibiting genes known as your tumor suppressor genes. We have the genes that regulate the apoptosis, and we have the DNA repair gene. So ito yung mga 4 main targets natin. All right, so ito yung normal cell, and we have the acquired environmental DNA damaging events. Okay, remember that during the cell cycle, nire-repair yan kung may mga may problema with regards to complementary attachment of your DNA pairs. All right, so i-repair yan ng cell. When the DNA is repaired, so okay tayo, back to normal. However, when there is DNA damage and failure to repair, such as your inherited mutations in the genes affecting your DNA or mismatched repair genes, and so for the genes that affects your cell growth and apoptosis, so there would be mutations in the genome of the somatic cells. Remember, pag sinabi nating mutation, di ba, permanent damage na yun to the cell, to the DNA. Okay? So pag meron na tayong mutation, again, it will activate growth-promoting oncogene. So growth-promoting ma-activate, so mag-grow lang na mag-grow. Alright? We have alterations the genes that regulate apoptosis. So usually, wala nang magpopulis or wala nang hindi na nagkakaroon ng apoptosis. So ibig sabihin, magli-live forever na yung neoplastic cells natin, or there can be an activation of cancer suppressor gene. So inactivate mo ang tumor suppressor gene. So wala man magi-inhibit sa tumor. That's why the cancer or the tumor cells grow. So as a result, there is expression of altered gene products and loss of regulatory gene products, which will result to your malignant neoplasm. Again, these are the hallmarks of your carcinogenesis, or the main changes in the cell physiology that lead to formation of malignant phenotype. Okay, we have the self-sufficiency in growth signals. That is number 1. Pag sinabi nating self-sufficiency, ibig sabihin the tumor cells, meron siyang sariling mundo. It can promote, it can produce, or it can make itself materials needed for its survival. Okay, so when we say oncogene, these are the gene that promotes autonomous cell growth in cancer cells. and derived by mutations in proto-oncogenes. So pag nag-mutate mo yung tumor or yung proto-oncogenes or the genes that promote the growth of the cancer cells, syempre mag-grow lang yan na mag-grow. Okay? And the oncoproteins are the products of these genes, no? Or tumor-producing genes, or also known as your proto-oncogenes. All right, so growth factors, remember that the cancer cells are capable of synthesizing the same growth factors to which they are responsive. For example, in sarcoma, we have the TGF-alpha, and for glioblastoma, we have the platelet-derived growth factor. So self-sufficiency, kasi nga, na-activate yung proto-oncogenes nila, which will produce your growth factors and will stimulate the growth of the tumor cells. Next is your insensitivity to growth inhibitor signals. So, remember that the tumor suppressor genes, ito yung nagpe-prevent na magpo-proliferate further yung cell or magpo-progress further yung cell cycle. So pag insensitive na yung tumor cells doon, so wala nang magi-inhibit ng growth. So therefore, hindi yun mape-prevent or hindi malilimit yung growth. Therefore, magpo-produce or mag-grow talaga yung malignant neoplasm natin. Alright, so ito yung tumor suppressor genes which control the cell proliferation. They apply brakes in your cell cycle. Okay, so pag meron, as I have mentioned, uncontrolled yung proliferation natin. So example of your tumor suppressor genes include your RB gene, TGF-beta, APC, and P53. So P53, remember this one, this is the guardian of the genome and it has multiple functions, and mainly this is a tumor suppressor genes or anti-proliferative, and it also regulates the apoptosis of your cells. So that's why it is the guardian of the genome, kasi ito yung pinaka-importante and it has multiple functions. So this is an example of your P53 acting on a cell that has undergone or that has been exposed to your ionizing radiation or carcinogens and mutagens. So normally the P53, the hypoxia and DNA damage will activate your P53, which will bind to your DNA and causes the upregulation of target genes such as your P21, which will arrest the cell cycle. So hindi na siya mag-grow, or merong chances for the cell to repair itself, and therefore it will revert back to its normal morphology or normal function. Okay, however, when there is also upregulation of genes that including your apoptosis genes such as your BAX and BAC, okay, so it will cause the apoptosis of the cell para hindi siya mag-grow, para hindi siya maging neoplastic yung cell, patayin natin. All right. Okay, so in cases na wala tayo or there is loss or mutation in P53, so wala na ito. So P53 dependent genes not activated. So still walang no cycle arrest, no DNA repair. Therefore, there is expansion of the mutant cells of the neoplastic cells and will produce your malignant tumors. Okay. Okay, next is evasion of apoptosis. As I mentioned earlier, yung P53, di ba? So pag wala ng P53, hindi na siya nag-apoptosis. So therefore, the cells or the tumor cells can reproduce itself. Okay, limitless replicative potential. So limitless, produce lang siya ng produce. By what? By, yan? Yung telomerase natin is still active. Okay, activation of the enzyme telomerase. Remember in your, basta na yan, discuss natin dito, di ba? Yung telomere length, pag na-maintain yung telomere length, forever kang young or forever kang replicative, just like your stem cells natin. So somehow there is replicative potential of your tumor cells via the activation of the telomerase. Okay, next is just sustained angiogenesis. Remember that. So meron tayong mga growth factors pa din na napoproduce to sustain the growth of your tumor cells. Okay, when the tumor cells exceeds the supply or the demand ng the demand ng tumor cells for oxygen and nutrients. So sometimes, as I mentioned, pag mga bulky tumors, they go magne-necrosis sila. Okay, magne-necrose yung tissue. All right. And remember, angiogenesis is required for metastasis. Kasi, syempre, doon lang siya yung way para ma-throw ang tumor cells to other sites. Okay. So, again, how the tumor cells develop a blood supply via these factors. We have the vascular endothelial growth factor and we have the fibroblast growth factor. All right. Next is the hallmark of your malignant tumor, of your cancer, is your ability to invade and metastasize. So loosening of intercellular junction. So ito yung example natin kanina nyo. For example, yung ang tawag dito, yung intercellular bridges. But in this case, epithelium, no, we have the cadherin, right? So pwedeng attachment of the tumor cells. So pag wala na siya, there is loss of polarity. So ito yung ano natin na hindi na sila nagpo-form your line, no? Na may sarili na silang mundo. So they can attach, and yon, we have the collagenase, which will degrade, or which will cleave your type 4 collagen in your basement membrane, diba? Type 4 on the floor, basal lamina. All right. And then eventually migration. All right. So that is how the tumor cells or the malignant tumor cells invade and cause metastasis. And other include your ability to evade host response under altered cellular metabolism. All right. So carcinogenesis, vascular dissemination and homing of tumor cells can cause the formation of tumor emboli. So usually very common ito with renal cell carcinoma. And most travel as single cells and adhesion to vascular endothelium and extravasation. All right. So now we go to your carcinogenic agents. So carcinogenic agents can be chemicals, can be radiation, or microbial agents. For the chemicals, this can be natural or synthetic and can be direct or indirect acting. So pag sinabi natin indirect acting, ano pa sila in active form? They are pro-carcinogens and their active end products are called ultimate carcinogens. So merong process in which the pro-carcinogens can be converted into ultimate carcinogens. So pag direct reacting ultimate carcinogens are highly reactive and they have electron deficient atoms. So gutom sila. So maghahanap sila ng ka-pair nila. So yun yung direct chemical carcinogen and the indirect reacting chemical carcinogen. So usually they react with electron-rich atoms. As I have mentioned, gutom sila. So maghanap sila ng rich atoms present in your RNA, DNA, and other cellular proteins. All right. So examples include your alkylating agents, your polycyclic hydrocarbons, which are present in your cigarette smoke, your animal fats during broiling meats, smoked meats and fish. So somehow meron na tayo during our lifetime, meron tayong mga cells na pwedeng mag-transform. All right? We also have aromatic amines and azodyes. So we have B-naphthylamine. Remember this one, guys, yung bladder cancer, azodyes. We have gastric carcinoma, and remember this one, aflatoxin B, which can cause your hepatocellular carcinoma. Okay, and usually most of them are mutagenic and affect the RAS gene and p53 genes. And also we have your radiation carcinogenesis, usually UV rays, also X-rays, nuclear radiation, and therapeutic irradiations. Okay, however, with therapeutic irradiations, of course, i-weigh yung risk and benefit. If the benefit outweighs the risk, of course, gamitin natin yung therapeutic irradiation, right? So usually radiation affects the chromosomes and can cause translocations and point mutations. So for UV, again, this can cause skin cancers such as your melanoma, squamous cell carcinoma, basal cell carcinoma, and is capable of damaging your DNA. So remember, your p53 gene, the guardian of the genome, usually ito yung most commonly affected by your UV rays. And also we have the viral and microbial oncogenesis. We have DNA viruses, RNA viruses, and some bacteria. So for viral oncogenes, so we have the RNA viruses, namely your human T-cell leukemia virus T1 or type 1. Okay, so this can cause your T-cell leukemia, all right? Your HPV can cause, very common ito, no? Squamous cell carcinoma of the cervix, the anogenital region, the mouth, the larynx, and it's usually sexually transmitted. And remember that is the common cause of cancer or cervical cancer, which usually mga high-risk type of your human papilloma virus, which include your type 16 and 18, while your genital warts, low risk, type 6 and 11. So remember this one, 16 and 18 for HPV type 16, 18 causes your cervical cancer. All right. Next is your EBV. Ito yung mga common, guys. Ano yung mga cause ng mga agents na ito? Remember this one. All right. Your EBV will cause your lymphoma. All right. Burkitt's lymphoma, B-cell lymphoma, and immunocompromised, and nasopharyngeal carcinoma. Your hepatitis B virus, strong association with liver cancer or hepatocellular carcinoma. So remember this, guys, yung mga infective agent and yung ano yung cancer. Aline. Hello, Aline. Nasaan na tayo? Okay. Guys, please bear with me. Malapit na tayong matapos, ha? Okay. Huwag niya munang anuhin dyan. Okay. Huwag niyo munang i-unmute. Alright? So, ito sinabi ko, bacteria can also cause your cancer. For example, your gastric lymphoma or what is called as your mucosal associated lymphoid tumor. And aside from that, it can also cause gastric carcinoma. Okay, so what are tumor antigens? These are tumor-specific antigens or tumor-associated antigens which can be detected in the blood to monitor the disease or to sometimes diagnose the disease. Okay, so this can be viral antigens, your oncogenic viruses, which can be detected by your laboratory tests. It can be PSA in prostate, oncofetal antigens can be present, such as your CAA and AFP. All right, or products of amplified genes such as HER2/neu, which is present in your prognostication of your breast cancer. And we also have anti-tumor mechanisms such as your cytotoxic T lymphocytes will cause or will infect your cancer cells or tumor-infected cells. We have the natural killer cells, macrophages, and the humoral mechanisms, complement, and antibodies. Okay, so you just read on that. Secondary fractures can be caused by your tumors. Effects on functional activity, again, we have adenomas and adrenal carcinoma or adrenal tumors that can elaborate corticosteroids. So pwede siya mag-produce ng mga substances, mga hormones which will cause the effect or tumor, which will cause effects to the host. Okay, so remember this one, your cancer cachexia usually accompanied by weakness, anorexia, and anemia. So ito makikita natin pag may mga cancer or may mga cancer patients natin, usually they are skinny or payat talaga sila, di ba? So these are known as your cancer cachexia, all right? So severe cachexia correlated with the size and extent and the spread of the cancer. And we also have terms such as paraneoplastic syndromes, which is actually a constellation of symptoms that occur in cancer patients that cannot be explained and is brought about by the substances secreted by your tumor. So for example, ito yung mga common paraneoplastic syndromes. We have the hypercalcemia, Cushing syndrome, NBTE or non-bacterial thrombotic endocarditis brought about by the products secreted by your tumors. Right, so the most common neoplasms associated with paraneoplastic syndromes include your lung and breast cancers and also hematologic malignancies or lymphomas. And ito yung few last slides. Okay, we have the staging and grading. Pag sinabi natin grading, ano yung histologic grade niya, whether it is well differentiated, moderately differentiated, or poorly differentiated. And with regards to staging, this is very common or very important for patients na kailangan ng management. So whether chemo or radiotherapy or surgical intervention. So for staging, we follow the TNM system or the tumor, nodes, and metastasis. So the tumor, with regards to tumor, yung size niya, kung how large, depending on the type of tumor, breast CA, lung CA, depende sa size, all right? And also with regional lymph nodes involvement, yung lymph nodes natin, usually mga specimen natin, kinakount, nag-harvest tayo ng lymph nodes, and kinakount natin yung tumor present in your lymph nodes. And we count, for example, 16 of 23 lymph nodes positive for metastasis. So, sinasama yun sa histopath report natin. And also, there is presence or absence of distant metastasis. Usually ito yung clinical clinical stage na to usually kasi it's the clinician which will actually by imaging, so merong tumor for example sa liver, tapos sinend na specimen sa atin are colon colectomy specimen or colon specimen. So hindi natin malalaman kasi kailangan histologic evidence yung makita natin na may sinabit silang liver na kung saan nandun yung colon cancer. So usually T tsaka N staging lang sa histopathologic stage. Pag known talaga na metastasis, then we write the M1. Okay? And we also have laboratory diagnosis, again, morphologic methods, usually sa histopath, biochemical assays, and molecular diagnostics. So, again, microscopic tissue diagnosis, this is the gold standard kasi we get to see the tumor, kung anong klaseng tumor siya. So, kailangan tignan talaga siya sa microscope. So, this can be done using excision or radical specimen or biopsy. And we also have frozen section. Can be fine needle aspiration or cytologic smears. Okay, so frozen section, alam niyo naman frozen section, while the patient is in the OR, so titingnan natin kung whether the margins are adequate yung margins natin or mayroong tumors pa din sa margin. So pag sinabi natin may tumor pa din sa margins na sinabmit ng surgeon, babalikan nila yung specimen or babalikan nila yung patient. So magkukuha pa sila ng sample until yung margins natin is negative of tumor. Kasi the problem is pag hindi binalikan ng surgeon, so ibig sabihin sabi natin, may tumor pa din sa margin natin. So ibig sabihin, hindi adequate yung resection nila. So kung hindi yan nasabihan o hindi nila alam na meron pa palang dun sa edge ng resection, so time will come, magkakaroon pa din ng tumor recurrence sa pasyente. Alright? So we also have biochemical assays with the use of, again, yung mga products or byproducts ng tumors natin, such as your CEA, your PSA, AFP, mga oncofetal genes, all right? And we have the molecular diagnostics, such as your PCR FISH, okay, HER2 and NMIC. And we also have immunohistochemical methods, all right? And we have your FISH. Okay, so I guess that's the end of your lecture. So I hope you have learned something. Prepare for a quiz next Thursday, okay, same time. And we also have our lecture on environmental and nutritional. Okay, so that's it, guys. Thank you for listening and good night. Happy eating. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.